let's be honest, whether you're a parent trying to connect with your teenager or maybe you manage a team of Gen Zers at work, or even if you're just someone trying to understand, like, what makes this generation tick. I mean, they can seem a little mysterious, right?
Yeah, it's like they're speaking a different language sometimes.
Totally. Like their anxieties, their whole relationship with technology. It's a lot.
It really is.
So today we're going deep on this, going to try to decode what's really going on.
Love that.
We're diving into Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, for this one.
Oh, such a good book. And Haidt doesn't just scratch the surface.
Right.
He really digs into the root causes of all this anxiety and depression in young people. And I think that's where it gets really insightful.
Okay, so let's unpack it. One of the things that Haidt talks about is this idea of the great rewiring of childhood.
Yeah.
Which basically argues that this generation's brains have been wired differently because of their relationship with technology.
Exactly. And he makes this super interesting point. It's not just about technology in general, right? It's about a very specific kind of technology.
Okay.
Smartphones.
Interesting.
And even more specifically, smartphones with front-facing cameras and the whole world of social media.
Yeah, he keeps coming back to 2012 as this real turning point.
Right.
Why is that year so significant?
Well, think about it. 2012 is when high-speed internet really became widespread.
Yeah.
The iPhone 4 with its front-facing camera was already hugely popular.
Everyone had one.
Yeah. And Facebook acquired Instagram that year.
Wow. So much happened in 2012.
It was kind of a perfect storm for this. Suddenly, everyone had a device in their pocket that could not only connect them to the entire world, but also, capture and broadcast their every move.
I mean, can you even remember what it was like before everyone was documenting their lives online?
It's crazy to think about, right?
It feels like a different world.
It really does. And for young people whose brains are still developing, this shift was seismic. It changed everything, the way they interacted with each other, the way they saw themselves, the way they experienced the world.
Haidt makes this pretty wild comparison, too.
Oh, yeah.
To raising kids on Mars. This harsh environment where you're constantly in defend mode.
Oh, wow.
And he argues that for Gen Z, the online world can feel a lot like that. Is that, do you think, a bit of an overstatement? Isn't there some good that comes from teenagers being able to connect online?
It's definitely a provocative analogy, but I think he has a point.
Okay.
I mean, imagine being a teenager and knowing that every photo you post, every comment you make could be seen and judged by hundreds, even thousands of people.
Oh, totally.
I mean, that's a lot of pressure, right?
For sure.
It's easy to see how that kind of environment could lead to anxiety and this constant fear of social rejection.
So it's instead of exploring and experimenting the way kids should be, they're always worried about how they're coming across.
Exactly.
How they're being perceived by everyone else.
Yeah, right. And it seems like girls especially are hit particularly hard by this.
Oh, absolutely.
And to really grasp how intensely girls are affected by this, this constant social comparison, the book shares this really powerful story about a girl named Alexis Spence. She started using Instagram secretly when she was just 10 years old.
Wow.
By the time she was 12, she was struggling with self-harm and had even drawn this picture. It has cruel words written all over a laptop and phone.
Oh, gosh.
Representing how those devices made her feel. Really powerful.
It's heartbreaking, but I can see how it happens,
Yeah.
It's not just celebrities or models anymore. Girls are constantly comparing themselves to their classmates, their friends, anyone they see online.
And the comparison isn't just about looks anymore either. It's about their whole lives, their clothes, their friends, their vacations, their achievements. It's relentless.
And Haidt also talks about this rise of what he calls relational aggression online.
Yeah.
Which seems even more insidious than the physical bullying that was maybe more common in previous generations.
It's really shifted. I mean, think about it. Instead of, spreading rumors in the hallways or pushing someone around on the playground.
Right.
Girls are now using social media to exclude, shame, and gossip about each other.
Yeah, and it's constant.
And because it's online, it's persistent.
It's everywhere.
There's no escape from it. Have you noticed these kinds of dynamics at all, whether online or offline?
Oh, definitely. I think it's this constant undercurrent of social pressure now.
Yeah.
And while the book goes deep into the struggles that girls face online, it also reveals this kind of less talked about crisis among boys.
Oh, that's right. With boys, it's less about acute anxiety and more about this slow decline in engagement and achievement that's been happening for decades, but which seems to have like accelerated in the 2010s.
So we've got girls struggling with social comparison and then boys kind of withdrawing into video games and online spaces. It's a pretty bleak picture, but Haidt doesn't leave us hanging. He offers some really interesting solutions for maybe reversing these trends.
Yeah, and what I appreciate is that he's not advocating for, some kind of tech-free utopia.
Right.
He's a realist. He knows technology is here to stay.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's beneficial.
Of course.
But he's calling for, like, a more balanced approach.
Okay.
One that acknowledges both the benefits and the risks,
So let's talk about the solutions.
Okay.
He covers a lot of ground. Government regulation, changes in school policies, parental strategies. Where do we even begin?
Well, one of the most, I guess you could say controversial, but arguably necessary solutions he proposes is government regulation of these tech companies.
Interesting.
He argues that these companies, especially social media platforms, they've been allowed to operate with very little oversight.
It's true.
And they've been kind of exploiting vulnerabilities in the human brain,
Right.
Especially the developing brains of children and teenagers.
He's pretty tough on those companies, even comparing social media platforms to slot machines.
Yeah.
Designed to keep us hooked and coming back for more.
It's true.
And he doesn't let them off the hook for knowing about the harms they're causing.
No, he doesn't. And he brings up the Facebook files,
Yeah.
Those leaked internal documents that showed how Facebook was aware of the negative impact of Instagram on teenagers.
Wow.
But they chose to prioritize growth and profits over the well-being of their users, which is, that's pretty damning.
It really is.
Yeah.
So what does he suggest? Like, should we just ban social media altogether?
He doesn't go that far. He advocates for things like a duty of care for tech companies that target young people.
Okay.
Which means like designing platforms with safeguards to protect users from harmful content and excessive screen time.
So, like, building in those protections from the start.
Yeah, exactly. And he points to the age-appropriate design code in the UK as a potential model for this.
That makes sense. Essentially setting standards to protect kids' privacy and well-being online. Right. It's like we have safety regulations for toys and car seats.
Exactly.
So why not for online platforms?
It's a good point.
And he argues for raising the minimum age to open social media accounts to 16.
Oh, wow.
Closer to when, the brain is fully developed.
Interesting.
Because right now, it's 13 in most countries.
Yeah, that does seem pretty young.
It's awfully young, given what we know about, how addictive these platforms can be.
For sure.
Think about it. We wouldn't let a 13-year-old sign a contract or make other major life decisions.
Right.
So why are we giving them unfettered access to social media?
That's a really good point.
And it's not just about regulating the virtual world, right?
Right.
Haidt also talks about the importance of rethinking our whole approach to risk and independence in the real world, too.
Oh, absolutely.
He argues that we become so obsessed with safety that we're actually hindering kids' development.
I think that's true.
He calls it safetyism, right?
Yes. He believes that by, shielding kids from every possible danger, we're preventing them from learning to assess and manage risk.
Which are like essential life skills.
They are essential skills for navigating the real world.
So it's not about like eliminating risk altogether. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Between safety and freedom.
Yeah.
And one of the key ways to achieve that balance, he says, is through play.
Yes.
Which, he argues, we've pretty much squeezed out of childhood these days.
Oh, for sure.
Think about your own childhood. How much freedom did you have? Did you, roam your neighborhood with friends, build forts, or just hang out without constant adult supervision?
Oh, yeah. We were always outside.
Right.
Making up games, exploring. That's making me nostalgic just thinking about it.
Me too.
Yeah.
And, that kind of play, it wasn't just fun. It was crucial, I think, for developing all these important skills.
Yeah.
Social skills, creativity, problem-solving abilities, resilience.
It really was.
But these days, it's like kids are often overscheduled, overprotected, and just glued to their screens,
Yeah, it's sad.
Haidt argues that we need to reclaim play, both at home and at school.
I agree with that.
He highlights schools that have, shortened or eliminated recess.
Really?
Which he says is totally counterproductive.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because kids who are deprived of play actually become more restless and less able to focus.
That makes sense.
He mentions a school in Colorado that implemented a phone ban and saw huge improvements in in student well-being and academic performance.
Oh, wow.
That's a pretty powerful example.
It is.
So maybe instead of banning phones at home, parents should think about creating like phone-free zones and just encouraging their kids to engage in more real-world activities.
I think that's a great idea.
It's so easy to get caught up in that whole screen time battle.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe the answer is to make the real world more appealing.
Exactly.
And Haidt emphasizes that it's not just about the quantity of screen time either. It's about the quality of that time, too.
Makes sense.
Like passively scrolling through social media is very different from video chatting with a grandparent.
Sure.
Or like learning a new skill online.
Right. Completely different.
So how do we actually put all of this into practice?
It's a good question.
He talks about parental strategies, but it can feel overwhelming to even know where to start.
Yeah, I can.
Right?
Sure.
He offers a lot of practical advice. Things like setting clear limits, modeling healthy tech habits ourselves, and just encouraging, alternative activities.
I like that.
He even suggests treating social media like a driving privilege.
Oh, interesting.
Something that's earned through demonstrated responsibility and maturity.
I love that analogy.
So instead of just handing over the keys to the digital world, we need to actually teach kids how to navigate it safely and responsibly.
Absolutely.
And he stresses the importance of open communication, too.
Oh, for sure.
We need to talk to our kids about their online experiences, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And help them develop, critical thinking skills to evaluate all this information that they're consuming.
Which can be hard.
It can. And recognizing that, this is all new territory for everyone, right? We're all figuring this out as we go along.
Totally.
It's like we're pioneers in a digital Wild West.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And we need to create like a new set of norms and guidelines to ensure that this new world is a healthy and thriving one.
Absolutely. And he makes this really powerful point.
Okay.
That we can't just be bystanders to this whole mental health crisis in this generation. We need to be change makers.
I love that.
We need to advocate for better laws and policies.
Yeah.
We need to create healthier school environments, and we need to model responsible tech habits for our children.
That's a great call to action. So what stands out to you from all of this? What's one small step you could take today to create a healthier world for yourself or for, the young people in your life?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is.
And while you think about that, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we explore a more philosophical aspect of Haidt's argument.
Yeah.
The impact of this, phone-based life on our spirituality and sense of meaning.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yes, it really does.
So Haidt argues that the constant connectivity and distraction of the digital world is actually eroding our capacity for deep thought, for reflection, and for, connection to something larger than ourselves.
It's like it's making us spiritually shallow.
He even uses the term spiritual degradation.
Right.
That's pretty strong language.
It is.
What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, he draws on the work of Emile Durkheim, a sociologist who studied the role of the sacred in human societies.
Okay.
Durkheim believed that societies thrive when they have this balance between the sacred and the profane.
Interesting.
The sacred represents those things we hold in reverence and awe, things that connect us to something beyond our individual lives,
So like religious rituals, holidays, even nature.
Exactly, those kinds of things.
Okay.
And then the profane is, everyday life, the mundane, the ordinary.
So it's that contrast between the two that gives life meaning.
Right, exactly. The sacred provides a sense of purpose and transcendence, while the profane kind of grounds us in the reality of our daily existence.
But Haidt's argument is that the internet, with its constant stream of information and entertainment, it blurs the lines between these two realms.
It does.
Flattening everything into, like, a digital profane.
Think about it. The internet is always on.
Yeah.
There's no Sabbath. There's no dedicated time for quiet reflection or contemplation.
That's true.
We're constantly bombarded with notifications, updates, demands for our attention.
It never ends.
No, it doesn't. And that constant distraction makes it really hard to experience awe, wonder, and that sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And it's not just the distractions, it's also the content itself.
Oh, interesting.
Social media, with its emphasis on, self-presentation and social comparison, can actually hinder our spiritual growth.
Okay, so how so?
Well, it's like we're constantly performing for an invisible audience, right? Curating our online personas and seeking validation through likes and comments.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And it keeps us focused on ourselves rather than on something larger.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
He even compares social media to a literal platform where we're like standing on a stage.
He does.
Trying to impress others and gain social status, which is, I mean, the opposite of the humility and self-reflection that's often cultivated through, spiritual practice.
Right, exactly.
So what's the antidote? If the digital world is making us, spiritually shallow, how do we reclaim that sense of depth and meaning?
Well, Haidt suggests a few practices, many of which are drawn from ancient wisdom traditions.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of mindfulness and meditation, practices that cultivate present moment awareness and help us, detach from the constant stream of thoughts and emotions.
I've heard that meditation can actually change the brain.
Yeah.
But I've always been a bit skeptical. Is there any evidence to support that?
There's actually a lot of research on the benefits of meditation.
Oh, wow.
Studies have shown that people who meditate regularly show reduced activity in the default mode network.
What's that?
So it's the part of the brain that's active when we're, lost in thought, worrying about the past or future, or just caught up in criticism.
Oh, okay. So it's like meditation helps quiet that inner critic.
Yeah, exactly.
And allows us to be more present and grounded in the moment.
Right.
That's really interesting.
And Haidt also emphasizes the power of awe and wonder, especially in nature.
Yeah.
He talks about how experiencing awe, whether it's gazing at a starry night sky or witnessing a breathtaking natural landscape, can shift us out of our, self-focused perspective and evoke a sense of connection to something vast and mysterious.
He calls it taking awe walks, right? Like just leaving your phone behind and just being fully present to the beauty of the natural world.
Right. Yes, exactly.
I love that idea.
It's simple, but it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's like hitting the reset button on your brain.
It really is.
And finally, Haidt talks about the importance of ritual and community, too.
Yes.
He argues that we've lost many of the traditional rituals that once marked, important life transitions.
Yes.
And created a sense of shared meaning.
It's true.
Like religious ceremonies or even just simple family traditions.
Exactly.
Like we used to have.
Yeah.
And he encourages us to create new rituals, both individually and collectively.
I like that.
That help us, connect to something larger than ourselves.
So it could be something as simple as a weekly family dinner or a monthly gathering with friends.
Right.
Anything that creates a sense of rhythm and connection in our lives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's about intentionally carving out that time and space for the things that nourish our souls and remind us of what truly matters.
Absolutely.
So it seems like Haidt's argument goes, far beyond just the psychological and social harms of a phone-based life. He's making a case for a more mindful, intentional, and spiritually grounded way of being in the world.
He is. It's a powerful message.
It really is. It definitely gives us a lot to think about.
A lot to think about.
Earlier, Haidt compared social media to a slot machine for the brain.
Oh, yeah.
Feeding us those little hits of dopamine that keep us, coming back for more and more.
Right, right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
What parts of your life feel like a slot machine? And what steps can you take starting today to break free from those patterns and create a more meaningful and fulfilling existence?
It's a question worth asking ourselves.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for being here.
We'll see you next time for another exploration of ideas that matter.